Hello, dear. This is Global Matters. On this program, we bring you global issues that shape the world, issues of global agenda that determines our national and common interests, especially in Nigeria and Africa. My name is Salamatu Ibrahim. Thank you for being there. Now, in today's edition of the program, we shall attempt to do an evaluation of the international efforts in the fight against terrorism, especially in the face of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, 20 years after the United Nations invasion of the South and Central Asian country, to rid it of Islamic extremism in 2001. Well, prior to this time, little was known about Islamic extremism. The United States and its allies had invaded the country to neutralize Osama bin Laden, who was the leader of Al-Qaeda, a group responsible for killing over 3,000 people in a twin bombing of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in the United States. Osama bin Laden was eventually killed by the U.S. forces in Afghanistan in 2011. Now, the Taliban was accused of shielding Al-Qaeda and the activities of Islamic terrorists. This made the country a prime target for the United States, Britain, and other NATO allies. The recent withdrawal and subsequent exit of the United States military and its allies from Afghanistan on August 31st gives credence to the conversations about the impact of the 20 years war in Afghanistan. The line of thought also goes for other countries the NATO forces have invaded to combat extreme Islamist groups and terrorist organizations. Now, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other designated terrorist groups like Boko Haram in Nigeria have become common global threats. They find a safe haven for their terrorism, especially in weak states, which offer them convenient breeding environment. Having spent over $1 trillion to execute the counterinsurgency war in Afghanistan, President Biden clearly doesn't want to continue what he describes as an endless war, which has cost the United States fortunes. According to the 2020 Global Terrorism Index, 10 countries are most impacted by terrorism activities, with Nigeria coming third on the list. Now, here are the top 10 countries battling terrorism. Take a look. Now, Afghanistan is the most affected country in the world, accounting for 41% of deaths in Afghanistan from terrorism globally, with the Taliban being responsible for 87% and the Islamic State and the Levant being the second deadliest group in that country. Iraq is the second most affected terrorist country. ISIL is responsible for most of the terrorist-related deaths, and Nigeria is third on the list, ravaged by the activities of Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province, ISWAP. Others are Syria, where ISIL is present, Al-Shabaab in Somalia with allegiance to ISIL. Yemen is battling the activities of Al-Qaeda and Ansar Allah, and Pakistan, India, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Philippines are all facing terrorist attacks on civilian population and security assets. And so today, we shall attempt to make sense of why the conflict driving terrorism in these countries persists despite interventions by the United States and its allies, and what the affected countries must do to address decades of attack on civilians and bring an end to the activities of these terror groups. Now, joining me from London is a counter-terrorism expert and the president of Africa Security Forum, an international security group in London, Temitope Olodo, and from Milan in Italy, Mark Godwin Iweajuwa. He is the publisher of Schengen Story magazine. Good to have you both gentlemen join me. We will commence the conversation after this short break. Do stay with us.
The world has become more connected than ever before. Every continent, color, race, language, and religion, even government, move towards common goals. We now live in a global village. Here on this program, we'll bring you global issues to shape our world.
Government can do a lot with tax revenues collected for health and education.
The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned to see whether together we can improve that situation.
The emphasis on education, on vocational training, on the development of entrepreneurship is absolutely critical to its democracy.
The Nigerian government, we would ask them to follow up the investigations that we have had, the evidence that we have gathered, and ultimately we made a number of recommendations.
As we travel the world, we explore these issues of international and diplomatic relevance. Indeed, the global agenda that determine our national and common interests. With me, Tunde Alabi, live on AIT.
You're welcome back. Well, we're still looking at the impact of global fight against terrorism, and our guests are already joining us virtually. We do have joining us live from London, the President, Africa Security Forum UK, Temitope Olodo. He joins us from London. Thank you so much, Temitope, for joining us. And of course,
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And from Milan, Italy is Godwin Iwajuwon. He is the publisher, Schengen Story Magazine. Thank you for joining us. Well, let me start up with...
Thank you, madam.
You're welcome. Let me start up with Temi Tope. Now, are you surprised, for instance, that the fight against terrorism persists despite global effort to stem the tides? We saw what happened with the Taliban in Afghanistan, where the U.S. and its allies went into that country to get rid of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden and his group, and other terrorist groups. But 20 years on, the U.S. has been unable to stem the activities of terrorists and the Taliban from taking over government. Would you say, or are you surprised by the fact that terrorism, the issue of terrorism, persists? Or how much do you think that the U.S. has been able to achieve in its invasion of Afghanistan to fight terrorists in that country?
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's important, to put things in perspective. There is no doubt that terrorism is evolving gradually, all over the world. Every nook and corner of the world is affected by one form of terrorism or the other. But we must put those kind of terrorism challenges into perspective, because when you look at certain countries that have been able to get rid of the issue of terrorism, because terrorism itself means that when you use force, coercion to affect a particular population of people or a particular group of people, that is where you bring terror to them. So as a result, very different group of activities fall into terrorism, including religious terrorism, which is what we are fighting in Afghanistan and also in Nigeria. And what the challenge we have with that is that when you have those kind of challenges, which are caused by which are religious related, it is always very difficult to get rid of them. So the Americans have actually done a good job to stop any kind of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan and helping the country to develop up to where they are now as we speak. But going forward, we need to look at some of the lessons that we could learn from Afghanistan and see how we as a country, Nigeria in particular, should take those advantages of things that have worked well and things that have not worked well and use it to our advantage to create safety and safety for our people in Nigeria.
Thank you. Now let's go to Godwin. Now, you are a publisher, Schengen Story Magazine, and some countries within the Schengen region have had their own fair share of terrorist attacks, even though a lot of the time it's difficult to situate whether these attacks are actually terrorist attacks. But to your mind, what would you say are activities or acts, or what would you say could properly define what terrorism is? Because when you look at the issue of Taliban, it looks a lot more political at the end of the day, because this is a political movement within a country that believes in a particular ideology. But their crime really is the fact that they were shielding terrorist activities. So in some countries like France, Spain, we've seen some level of attacks as well. So how would you define what terrorism really is, considering the dynamics of events?
Thank you very much, Madam. Just like my honorable partner just said, you have a large, it's an open space when you're defining that word terrorism. But anyway, from Europe, it's plain out terrorism, and that's human on human being. Europeans have suffered a lot of it, like you just said, in Spain, Madrid bombing, we've had in France, Paris, Nantes, we've had in Germany, Hamburg, and all corners of Europe. The fact of the matter is Europeans and the world alike will continue to see this aggressive and very inhumane and very mean reaction from their fellow human being on the other set of human being. As long as people don't come to a conclusion in ideology, as long as we have varieties of reasonings and varieties of mentality, there will be this thing. This has come to stay with us. Sadly, in our time, it's growing more and more. You're even having what you call the homegrown terrorism. We will see how it's playing out in Asia and Taliban. And what we are seeing there is what you call failure in human governance, failure in human politicking, failure in how to address human issues, human social issues. So it's a problem. Europe is suffering it, but I would like to say, as the program goes on, Europe has stepped up with measures to control it. So we are not going to be seeing very fierce reactions in Europe again, because the Europeans are now standing strong and making sure that we don't have these, except the very little ones, 1 or 2, 3 encounters around in Europe. But you won't have that situations where we had, like in Madrid bombing, like the Paris, the Nantes attack, like in Germany also. So it's an issue. It's serious. Humanity has come to its wit's end on issues concerning terrorism. But with what the Europeans are planning now, there is control, hoping that other nations could also imbibe into what the Europeans have. You know, there are about 7 modules, 7 module formula that has been enhanced and has been placed. And
perhaps you could,
believe me,
you could share. Perhaps you could share some.
Since they brought it in.
Okay, perhaps you could share with us what Europe is doing to stem the tides of terrorists that Africa and Nigeria needs to do. We've seen recent events where Boko Haram insurgents are surrendering to the Nigerian authorities, and
that's correct.
Yeah. So, what exactly do you think that Nigeria and Africa? I say Africa because some terror groups, for instance, Al-Shabaab, pay allegiance to international terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL. We're seeing Boko Haram with allegiance, ISWAP as well, with allegiance to ISIS. So what exactly do you think that the Nigerian government or even Africa can learn from what Europe is doing to stem these tides? Not forgetting, though, that this is an ideological warfare as far as this war is concerned.
Yes, that's a very good question, Madam. The very first thing that is very paramount and important is that Africa should now have stricter and controlled borderline. Africa doesn't really have a well structured and arranged borders. There's this movement. Yes, Europe has open borders. There are free movement also in the border, but there are no control, no strict rules. Not everybody just goes back and forth, and people enter. Whoever comes in with his arms, comes in with bombs, grenades, comes in, and that movement must be controlled. So that is one thing Europeans have been able to do, and it's working very well for them. Also, the exchange of data, exchange of informations and data, all different ministries or organizations in Africa should be able to have that free flow of data of people. free flow of data, like in airline, here in Europe, in airlines now, the government have the right to check-proof all passengers. So everybody in an airline has his or her data with the various arms of government here in Europe. And that's a good way to control, because these people move by flight, these people move, you know, with a twinkling of an eye, they've made their move. Also, it's good to, Africa needs to check the financing of terrorism. One way terrorism has increased and really grown is that funds are being passed around. You see Boko Haram buying gadgets. Boko Haram, ISWAP has HD videos they use for their propaganda. And those things were bought. Now, who bought that? How did they get that? This means money was being exchanged. So Africa needs to also know that we need to disrupt their financial flow. Know where money is coming from. Know the logistics behind funds that are moving. Okay. And be able to ascertain how money laundering, you know, here in Europe, they have what you call the money laundering law. You're not expected to carry some amount of money with you. But we don't have that in Africa. Okay. People go around with, somebody could be walking around with $1 billion with him, and you don't know what he's using it for.
Let me just hold you on. Okay.
Control of dangerous weapons.
Well taken. Your points are well taken, Godwin. Let me just quickly bring in Temi Tokpe into the conversation. Interestingly, he is a security expert. But I don't know if Temi Tokpe is still there and we can hear me, but if you can, just share some of your tips with us. We're seeing a situation where, as I said earlier, Boko Haram terrorists are surrendering and they are being reintegrated back into society. What do you think is the risk of this? You know, this is an ideological warfare. We are looking at a country where data information is not so harmonized enough for the government to utilize. So data is a problem. So how do you think the government can handle this particular risk of Boko Haram insurgents surrendering?
Is that for me?
Yes, that's for you, Temi Tokpe.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, what a fantastic question to ask. So unfortunately, I had the privilege of working in what was called the Office for Security and Counterterrorism, and that was the implementation of the prevent strategy. And prevent strategy means we catch people early from committing crimes, and you know, when they've committed a crime, they have to serve that sentence. I've heard the news, everybody have had it, about 5,000 plus people giving themselves up to the military. Unfortunately, it's only in Nigeria, and I say with all due respect to the military, it's only in Nigeria that the military are the judge, the jury, the executioner of all prevent issues. It doesn't work like that, and it should not work, and that's the reason why nobody has any trust in that system. The radicalization process is that you find individuals who are about to commit crime or who are vulnerable individuals, and they need to be deconstructed so that they could move away from those crimes and become valuable members of the community. Since 2009 to date, which is over almost 11 years, where is the success stories of Nigerian de-radicalization project to date? Nigeria has a brilliant implementation plan, but their strategy is completely wrong. In the first place, if people have come out to say that we are denouncing our affiliation to a terrorist group, it should not be the military that is doing the assessment. It should be a different people completely, and it should not be the military that will declare that those people are free or are no longer holding those ideologies.
But just to put it in perspective, I think there's a program of government that is
and they should not be under the military, because if the military are the one catching them, the military are the one saying these people are dangerous, the military are the same people saying these people are now free to enter the country. How do you know? It doesn't work like that. In other countries around the world where this thing have been happening, in Italy where my brother is and other places, it's a different group. They use community, and that's the reason why you see that a lot of community are rejecting these people, because you should have used groups within the community to speak to them, because group within the communities we know. And moreover, You're saying 5,000 people came out to say they are no longer interested in this life of terrorism. But I've not seen equivalent weapons from them. I've not seen the weapons that they've taken from the super camps or anything that are available. So if 5,000 people are giving up to say they are no longer, involved in this, we should see about 3,000 AK-47. We should see some trucks or some other things. So I don't want the DSS to invite me for any discussion, of course. But what I'm trying to say is that it sounds ridiculous that the way in which this process is being done, there is no review. You can't actually review it and say this is actually effective. So I'm hoping that as the military listen to this conversation, they will bring in experts like my brother is in Italy, who have expertise, people like myself who have worked in this field, who are willing to help them to do this work effectively, so that we don't become laughing stock. Because you're saying you got 5,000 people that have given up. I'm believing. I'm of the view that most of these people are people that live in the
I don't know if you can hear me.
Boko Haram and ASWEPs are because of the conflict.
I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, just very quickly, there's a rehabilitation program that is being run by government and involves the military and other federal government agencies, prisons and other agencies to do this. But what I would really want to know is, the risk involved. This is a country where data remains a big problem, to the point that the federal government recently made it very compulsory for Nigerians to register their biometrics. So I'm looking at the risk factor. I'm moving forward, what the federal government should be doing to ensure that these guys who are repenting or who are surrendering are tracked.
Yes, madam. I didn't really get that actually, but I see that you're trying to see acts on the repentant Islam Boko Haram members.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Yes. My honorable Tobitokpe said so much. He gave good insights there. If you had him well, it's a funny situation. What they are doing back there in Nigeria is a mockery. They are making a mockery of the whole process of security, the whole process of human integration and all that. It's funny. That's a joke. When we see this, we laugh and wonder who is behind all this. You don't just wake up one morning, some group of people come and say they are repented and bring us back in. Who does that? Temitope was saying that it's a joke. Now, it's high time Nigeria government understand that there are ways of doing things and not that they laugh us here in the West. I'm sorry to say this.
Okay, Mark Godwin, if that is the issue, we're seeing global effort against terrorism. We saw US and its allies, NATO, go into countries to combat terrorism. But these 10 decades later, we're still talking about an expansion of territories of these terrorists. Unfortunately, we have to go now. I would really have loved us to talk about, the impact of some of these invasions on addressing the issues of terrorism in affected countries. Mark Godwin, we'd like to say thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, we'll extend this conversation to next week. Mark Godwin Iwajua Jonah joins me from Milan, Italy, and is the publisher, Schengen Story magazine. Thank you so much for your contribution. Temitope Olodo is the President, African Security Forum UK, joins me live from London. Hopefully, we're able to advance this conversation next week. Time indeed is not our friend. I'd like to say thank you for being a part of the show today. Join me again next week for another edition. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend. I am Salamatu Ibrahim. Goodbye.